Hello, guys. So today, once again, we are joined by the wonderful saxophonist Martin Speake, and we're very excited to announce that we've recorded an album together. It is currently available to purchase through my website and through Martin's bandcamp, and as always, the links will be in the description. The music is something I'm really honoured to be part of, and I could not be happier with how it came together. So today, Martin and I thought we would do a discussion on how the album came about and some of the broader musical logistics. So, as always, Martin, thanks for joining me, and it's always lovely to have you on here. So, I thought maybe we could start with the album title itself. So, you chose the title Resilience for this album. What inspired you there?
Well, I'm always stuck for a title actually. I'm composing so much music. I've got a list in a saved email somewhere of about 100 different titles or words that I thought would be titles, but I hadn't written this one down. And I think I've thought of a few things, and then it came to me because I've had to have, as your listeners and viewers might know, I've had to have a certain amount of resilience over the last 2.5 years, being a victim. I don't see myself as a victim, but it's a very sad situation because I lost everything, all my work anyway. What's called now cancel culture, which we never would have heard of 20 years ago, that term. So I thought, okay, resilience, that's short and that's applicable to my life anyway. And probably yours in some way. Everyone has to have a certain amount of resilience to survive in this world.
Well, yeah, and I can only speak about it from the perspective of being a musician, but I think resilience is a very important thing for every musician who doesn't get that golden ticket. So I think it's a good title. So maybe I'll talk. We've got the album track titles as well, which I've got my thoughts on why they were named as such. But maybe first of all, I'll talk about how the album came about. As Martin was saying, obviously, he had that unfortunate situation that he's gone through recently. So after we did the previous interview on this channel, Martin, in typical jazz style, said, let's record an album. And it was really inspiring because I kind of feel like in modern day music, this kind of just get up and go attitude, even in the jazz world, a lot of the times just is being lost a little bit. Whereas Martin, in good old school fashion, was just like, let's get down and record an album. And in a certain way, there was a element of pressure I felt for this, because maybe guitarists watching the video will be able to relate to this, but doing a guitar duo album kind of has its own challenges to really be able to pull it off and to make something that would hopefully be enjoyable to listen to. But we went for it. So straight away I started working on my comping for jazz standards. And then a month later or something, Martin sent me this wonderful album by Ben Monder. One of probably the only album that I hadn't heard by Ben Monder. And I was like, why haven't I heard this album? It's an album called Bloom. And it was really, really inspiring. I don't think for 1 second our album sounds anything like that, but it was really eye-opening to kind of see that the soundscapes that Ben was able to create. And I thought, right, well, I need to do a lot of thought. So I started to go on a little foray into pedals and stuff, which is totally new to me and something that I hadn't done. So, and then we just went down. Then I just went down south, and Martin hooked us up with a local recording studio through a contact of his, and we just got in there. We had 2 hours, and the mics went on, and we just played, and that's pretty much it. That's how this album came together, and it's really wonderful to be part of an experience that just so organic in that way. But anyway, have you got any thoughts on that, Martin?
Yeah, well, thanks for all of that. And what was fascinating in what you said there is using pedals was new to you. I was really surprised. I mean, I get an intuitive feeling about people and things now, and if well, I've got to record with you. I didn't know you're playing at all. I don't think I'd heard a note of your playing. So it's like, oh, it's cool. It's going to be fine. And I should say that originally, and that's the first time we've ever met in person as well. And the only reason we know each other is because you contacted me out of the blue, actually, didn't you? Last year, or I don't know when it was now, 2 years ago, I can't remember.
Well, actually, no, it was, I know you probably, it was actually through some mutual connections at Trinity. And you added me on Instagram because they were talking to you about me, and you added me on Instagram. And I saw this on Instagram, and as a kind of jazz blagger, then I was like, oh, a real jazz musician has given me some kind of props, and I was like, oh, fair play, this is nice. So, and I saw that, and I saw how willing you were to support these younger jazz musicians that were trying their best, essentially. And so then later, when I heard about your situation, and I'd heard all these how supportive you were to many of my friends at Trinity and everything, when I realized from all different backgrounds, by the way, Martin's supportive to people through all different backgrounds and, demographics and all that kind of thing. So when I found out that the tide had turned for you, that obviously upset me. So at that point, that's when I reached out to you and
Oh,
sent
okay.
you the
Well,
email and
that's so
support.
interesting because this is really interesting because the Instagram thing, and I know who you're talking about there, because those two students who are now becoming famous in their band, Nats or whatever it's called, right? There's
Yeah.
Stan and King, who I like very much, and I had good fun with those two guys. When in the first year when I first met them, it was Stan said, "You've got to have Instagram. Come here, give me a computer. I'm going to set up
He
Instagram."
told me the same. He told me the same.
So he's a great guy, So, and so early on, so he set it up for me, and then I did 3 posts, like really sporadically. Okay, and that was the end of it for me until recently, and I decided to start using it again and just post things, and post, the video of our recording, the video you made with our track, or just different projects of mine that I've got on video, just in a few, just I've started to use it, so I'm kind of getting the hang of that now. But that's so funny. The connection is full circle, isn't it?
Yeah, I won't go. I won't go into it deep. I struggle with Instagram. I'm not really. I like it for like funny 10-second videos, silly stuff. But I prefer longer format content. And I don't want to watch a 20-second insane lick. I would rather watch a whole like a piece of music.
Yeah, but
So
you're
that's
probably
why
different from a lot of people. I know, but this is sorry to interrupt you, but this is a lot of that will be, oh, people have only got this attention span of 20 seconds or whatever it is now. That there's something to do with that, isn't it? But I generally prefer
that's the thing.
YouTube things, and but it's obviously I don't want any of the social media, but it's serving a purpose. And also, for instance, it didn't work out, but Pizza Express, which I did 3 gigs at recently, they were the only venue in London that booked me in the last 2.5 years. And and I'm just telling you this little story, the reason they booked me is because they looked at my records and said, oh, you did that 2020, you sold out or nearly sold out 2 nights, whatever. Oh, yeah, well, I don't know why you've not played it since, because they don't care about the music, they only care about the numbers now. So they booked me to do these 3 gigs, a big band gig, big band launch, did an album with that, and then my band Cherokee did 2 gigs. And then I said, can I have some more gigs, please? They said, no, we looked at the figures, you haven't got enough people in. That's it. No, the reason I mentioned that is because prior to that last gig, which only had about 40 people in, but it was probably the best gig, because we did a 2-hour set and people would stay to the end, which was really reaffirmed my faith in some of humanity, that they could stay focused for 2 hours of non-stop music. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, the promoter at Pizza, after I said, can I have some more gigs? These gigs were great, blah, blah. And she said, prior to that last gig, she said, can you tell me what you're doing with social media? What's your social media plan? And I said, so I'm getting into Instagram and just send it that. It didn't make any difference, of course, but did, as a band leader, I had the feeling maybe I should engage a bit with Instagram and see what happens, if it makes any difference to anything. I don't know whether it did. I don't think it made any difference to people coming to the gigs. So that's my little story with Instagram, I suppose, and it's related to the guys you know, of course.
That's the thing, isn't it? As a band leader nowadays, it's extremely important. If you're the hired gun, then you can get away with other people doing that for you. But
Yeah.
if you're the band leader, then yeah, you do need to you need to be able to bring an audience nowadays, and that's the challenge.
I mean, that's what's
But
changed, I have to say. I've interrupted you again, but that's the challenge because I'm old enough to have seen it prior to all of this stuff. And venues, I would say, took more responsibility in the past. But now it's much easier for them to say, right, you bring an audience, you get onto it because you've got all your social media stuff. You need to bring the audience. I mean, there's a truth in that. There's a bit of truth in both, but of course, the other thing about this, we haven't talked about our album yet properly, but the other thing about this is what's changed is simply the cost of everything. So from their point of view, I can probably see, yeah, their overhead's going to be huge in central London. However, they make masses of profit selling pizzas that are probably like 50 pence to make, but maybe slightly more for 20 quid, So they're going to make huge profit on that kind of food anyway. But maximum profit is the game now with those kind of venues. Same with Ronnie Scott's, which always says it's got. Well, I can't get a gig there, but you have to sell out. But it's going to sell out every night anyway. I think they have so many tourists. So what I'm saying is that these venues do have huge costs. So bringing in punters is the main thing. Is not the music. They don't care what music brings in the punters. So anyway, that's
yeah,
a little bit of a rant about those venues. We can get on to something
well,
else now.
it's it's the sad state of the world, unfortunately. Like, it's just the way, and obviously we could get into like the economy and all that kind of stuff, but sadly it's just what the hardships us musicians need to go through, which is why we need resilience, Martin.
back to the album. That's very good link there. Exactly.
A
Yeah.
little segue there. But anyway, so the first track was named Quiet Intelligence. So I will put in a little clip of the of this first track. But basically, the track is based upon a D drone. There's a D drone, then that I set up on a looper, and then Martin comes in, and then essentially it goes from there. So, what led you to Quiet Intelligence?
There's a person called Dr. Zach Bush, who I recommend people check out, and I've been intrigued by him for quite a while. And he was talking about nature. That's what it was. The quiet intelligence of nature. That's all it is, really. I
Lovely,
recommend people
lovely.
check him out.
I'll have to check him out. I've never heard of him. So yeah, that's a very somber track. It starts very somber, but I don't know. To my ears, it's not got high peaks of intensity. It's relative. It's like kind of more like hills, going up and down, but it's got a beautiful flow. Then we move into a track called Truth Seeker. Seeker. So I could be completely wrong in why this track was named True Seeker, but I'm going to pose this to Martin before he explains the true reason. But I remember when we were recording at this point of the record, I started talking about how I'm really into conspiracy theories, any conspiracy theory, just out of it just interests me. And I think I made a little joke about David Icke or something. So I was wondering whether that conversation had inspired the title, or am I wrong?
I don't remember the conversation actually,
I don't remember
but I've
it.
read.
Oh, fair enough.
I've read vaguely remember, but I've read 12 David Icke books, and I've seen him talk several times, and I'm
Oh, he's
really
great.
impressed, really impressed by it. But it just shows you, first of all, conspiracy theories. Now I don't know how much you know about this, but in the 1960s, this term was put into the media by the CIA or FBI. I can't remember which CIA probably.
The Kennedy assassination, wasn't it?
It was
It was
that,
around that time.
yeah, and then they used it with Vietnam. You couldn't criticise them being in the war with Vietnam, but it was the Kennedy assassination. So you're aware of this, yeah? That's as far as I know, that's where that term came from, and it's being used so much now, including with me, of course. But Evan Parker said a great thing, the saxophone player. I'm not, just don't believe in conspiracy theories. I'm a conspiracy observer. And I named a tune after him as well on another recording that I haven't released yet, a quartet. So I wasn't into it at your age. So this is the last 20 years of my life, probably. I mean, I was more a rebel when I was younger, which was not necessarily productive, and it wasn't necessarily questioning so many things, and I was taken in by a lot of stuff, and I'm completely the other way around now. I was in the Communist Party when I was late teenager till I was 25. Communist Party of Britain, Marxist-Leninist, which is a sort of revolutionary Communist Party. And I'm against all of this stuff now because of the research is that for instance, the Bolshevik Revolution and the Nazis were financed pretty much by the same people. But that's another huge podcast. Okay, so I read a lot of books, a lot of stuff, and a lot of that would come under the title conspiracy, what you're saying, conspiracy theory. But there's so much proof.
So I suppose we've got a shared interest in that area.
Well, that's great.
Although having said that, I haven't been. It was more. I haven't been as obsessed with all of this stuff in the recent years as I was in my 20s. But there are still some dubious some podcasts that I still like to keep up with just because it interests me. It's not that I believe in. I don't know what I believe. It just interests me to go into this stuff.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing is to be open to everything, and if something resonates, it resonates. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's fine. But for me now is to question everything. And the authority, they're lying to us pretty much 24 hours a day, or manipulating news. Manipulating our perception, but and we can talk about that now, but it's probably haven't got time. But just to say that our perception, where does it come from? It comes from any input we've had, which is schools, parents, media, basically, what you read, or possibly friends. Where does our perception come from? So you have lots of people only taking their news from the BBC and the Guardian. They're going to have no idea what's going on, to be honest. And I was probably like that at one point, a long time ago. So,
well, I share those. I share those feelings. Yeah. So with that track, because with the first track, I can't remember all the tracks what I was doing, but I remember for the first track I was in drop D. So for Quiet Intelligence, I was in drop D, where you lower the bottom string down.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted a full sound of the guitar. I wanted to fill out the whole texture, and drop D, really fattens up the sound of a guitar. I've always really loved drop D. Whereas in the second track, I didn't want I didn't want it to be drop D all the time. I wanted to vary things. So this is just for the guitarist in the audience. I'm sorry, Martin,
That's fine.
but
Did you tune back up then?
no, for the
You
second
kept it.
track, I did a cheeky thing, and we ended up in F. And the start, the melody that Martin plays at the start on this track is absolutely sublime. It's really, really, really beautiful. But so I put a capo on my guitar on the third fret, but I was still in drop D. So, but that meant I was now in F because I had the
Okay.
capo. So it just kind of like changed the texture of the instrument a little bit to so I could still have that rich sound with the power chord at the bottom, the nice fifth at the bottom, and I could still have that pedal at the bottom, but I wasn't in D anymore. So these were the little thoughts I was having to try and vary it. So I was still able to fill out the texture, but also not just stay in one key. But anyway, so that's quite intelligent, and the idea going back to the inspiration of Ben Monder. Ben Monder does these incredible picking patterns, which Martin will know, which I don't really do those. He's got some incredible picking patterns, and he's able to create this texture that really fills up the space, and he can go on these harmonic journeys with that. So the texture that I used was based upon that, but it was it was just with the strumming. It's just this kind of circular strumming motion, and then you can take this on a harmonic journey in the same trying to emulate that Ben Monder thing, but within within the within what I'm capable of. So that was how that was the kind of thought behind that texture there. Um, but then we get on to Truth Seeker, and this became one of my favorite tracks on the album. So I'm gonna do a little disclaimer here. The original track, it took me a long time to set up the soundscape before Martin came in because I was looping lots and lots of layers with weird sounds like feedback noises through my line 6HX stomp. Then I used the harmonizer with the fifths on the top to create some textures that way. Lots of different sounds. So, and on listening back, I feel that warm up to the track took a little bit too long. So when I got the tracks back from Nick, who wonderfully recorded the album, then I edited, I cut out a little bit of the build. Did you notice that?
I wasn't thinking about it. No, I didn't notice. I've only listened to it a couple of times, so
Fair enough.
whatever.
So
It
that so
sounded
that
great.
was that was one edit I did. I just fade because usually I say I originally it faded in here, and I just moved the fade a little bit further just to move on the track so it didn't get a little bit it didn't get boring at the start.
You're the producer.
No, my brother. Well,
Two
I don't
then,
know what
right?
these. Yeah, my brother did a wonderful job on mixing it because I can't do the mixing, Martin. I put it together. I did a demo of the mix, but I make silly mistakes like I got the panning of the sax the wrong way round, so it ended up with a phased sound. And these are the kind of mistakes that I make because I'm not an experienced mixer. So this is what my brother was able to sort out, and he did a great job on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did do a little cheeky cut at the start of that track. But this is what we're talking about, guys, in general. Like this is very much just raw what you heard in the studio. This was just like a live performance. But there are a couple of areas where that I'll just discuss where I made tiny little changes like that one. But yeah, so this is like a noise track, really. It's just like an abstract noise track, and I use extremely heavy gain, the heaviest gain I've ever used in anything. I never play with that, but I made a special high gain track again because I heard Ben Mondo using his Rat pedal, which is a very old, a classic a distortion pedal, and he made these hugely distorted soundscapes, and yeah, and I just thought, well, let's have a go at that. So, so that's so what, and I think No Fear is a very appropriate title for the kind of for the track. But what were you, what inspired, what drew you towards that
That's the,
title
that's the third track, isn't it? Yeah.
on the album? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's a bit like resilience, isn't it? It's connected to resilience. Most, I have to say, it's not that I don't have fear, but I think because of my experience over the last 2.5 years, I have less fear because I've got through it. I mean, it's still going on to a certain extent, but to have huge numbers of people supposedly against me in some form, or criticizing me online, or endlessly gossiping about me or how terrible I am or whatever, I've had to, I had it to a certain extent before that actually, of not caring what other people think, which I have to say, the majority of humans do care. What I mean by that is they're worried about people's opinions of them. So a lot of people adjust themselves or what they say to be liked. I've just written a Substack about this, my continuing experience, and I quote Bruce Lee in it. Actually, the martial arts guy and actor.
Oh, of course, yeah, legend.
He said he's quite a wise person. There was a little video clips of him on Twitter X that I put a link to in the article. I'll send you and you can see because there's a lot in the article. But I do mention this thing that I think musicians have a double layer of this because so they're already ordinary humans, and most people are brought up to worry what somebody else thinks of them. Okay, so we all have this thing. But then the musicians have another layer of it because they want their playing to be really liked so they can be booked by other people, either for teaching or to be in their bands. And this brings up a huge question, is because do people play the way they really want to play? Or do some people definitely play to get a particular way to get work? I'm just saying that it's fine for them to do that, That album, Bloom, is by Ben Mondo and Bill McHenry. He didn't mention him. He's a saxophone player on it. And Bill McHenry, I think even Ethan Iverson said this in some interview. He said, when I met Bill, he had a business card. And the business card said, Bill McHenry, saxophonist, one style. And I thought that was fantastic. That's kind of me, really. I'm adaptable to play with different people, but I can't change my sound, my style, you know what I mean? I'm not a session player. And I thought that's a fantastic business card. I want to get one like that myself. So I've related a few things there to that title of No Fear. Of course, I'm going to have some fear. If a car drives at me, I'm going to be shitting myself. But but I'm liberated. It's just I'm not so hugely special or anything or brave or it's just I don't care what people think. I mean, I want to work. It's sad that people. I've got to toe the line to work. That's basically what's going on. And most people have got to toe. No, you toe this now. You do this narrative.
So yeah, well, as Martin was saying, so a lot of the time, as they say, hardships create strong men. Sadly, so yeah, no fear is an appropriate title. So yeah, it's probably the most. It's the most free track on the album, as in, I don't know whether free is the right word, but it's kind of just like a soundscape. On that track, I remember I did the old D tune. I can't remember what I was in. Maybe I know I ended up in drop D, but I went down and I think I went to like a C or something,
It's good.
because there's so much distortion that it's hard to hear in the same way what notes you're playing, because there was so much like background noise due to the distortion. But it doesn't matter because of the kind of track it is. But then at the end of the track, I remember I wanted to play some chords, and I didn't really know what tuning I was in. So I had to go back up to drop D in order to know some chords, so I could give the track some kind of closure, to play some chords. But it all came together really, really nicely, and as I say, it became one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Do you mean
So,
do you mean you took the capo or whatever you call it, the capo off in the middle of the track?
oh no,
Oh, you did.
I only used the capo for
Capo.
the Truth Seeker track. For
Oh,
this
okay.
one, I didn't use the capo again, but I did use a bottleneck or a slide. I did use this.
Well, I got to check the album out
Um,
again. There's so much. There's so much that you did on the album that's amazing. I need to listen to it again.
yeah, I
The
used
other
this,
people
but
should
to
know
try.
is that we. Sorry, I mean I've said it earlier that we didn't rehearse. We didn't. We talked about it a little bit, but not much really.
Yeah, it was on the fly. But as I say, I do give Martin the credit for. I think it's your experience, your musical experience that tied everything together,
Okay.
and that I'm very grateful for. But yeah, and since then I'm working with some like Indian musicians at the moment. It's like world folk music, and I've actually become a little bit of a fan of the slide because they do a lot of slide guitar in the Indian stuff. So I've actually tried to broaden my horizons with that slide ever since then. And that's why you said you got your one style, and I feel I am the same. Well, I am the same. I just do what I do, unapologetically. But I feel for this album, I still feel I was doing what I do, but I kind of feel like it was an opportunity to broaden what I consider myself, because for far too long I've been very focused on single note lines through changes and trying to work on my single note lines and trying to work on flow through changes. And it was very freeing to have an opportunity to step away from that. And I feel I learned a huge amount by going a slightly different route. But yes, it's always style players that I love. I remember that when I went to uni, you ask the people, or conservatoire, or whatever you want to call it, you ask the people who their favorite players are before they join the uni. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I love George Benson. I love this great. I love that great. And then you ask them after, and they're like, oh, who's your favorite guitarist? And they're like, oh, yeah, I love Nile Rodgers and stuff. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I don't want to throw any shade of Nile Rodgers, but it just kind of shows how these people are put through this meat grinder, and they come out this little package where they just want to sit there and play some funk lines in a function band. I'm not saying that's always the case. I know there's a huge artistry to doing that as well. I've got a friend who does that incredibly well, and he's very passionate about it. But I do feel that people lose sight of their goals, and that's something that I never have. I fell in love with Holdsworth, and I've never gone back. I fell in love with Ben Monder. I've never gone back. I fell in love with Coltrane, and I've never gone back. And all of these artists, I've never been tempted to. I've chosen to step away from playing an Amy Winehouse song for money, and I feel if I were to do that, then it would take me down the wrong path. But maybe I'm sounding a little bit of a bit judgmental here. So
No, I mean
I think
it's similar. It's similar to me in the sense, and I fell into it in a way. The teaching. I'm not very good at. First of all, I'm not a doubler, so it rules me out of all the saxes, all the clarinets, all the flutes to do shows. It rules me out of that commercial world really. And I started doing teaching when I was at college, because I went to Trinity, student doing classical saxophone, and I got a job then in the London Education Authority, which is before your time, I think. Yeah, it will be before it, which had a really good scheme of free instrumental lessons throughout London, and you would audition and get on the panel. So I started my teaching with that, and then after about 10 years, I started at the Royal Academy of Music because a musician called Barrett Smalls said, "Oh, I'd like Martin Speake to come and teach you." Anyway, that gradually built up, and over the years I've taught in the conservatoire. So I thought I really liked that position of dealing with the music, and I was learning all the time by teaching at a high level, because the students are pretty high level students in those places, certainly at the Royal Academy of Music, but also at the other colleges. So I had ruled myself out of doing function gigs. I can't play commercial saxophone very well. I'm not adaptable at all. But neither's Alan Holdsworth. I was thinking, as you said, Alan Holdsworth, one style. it is, isn't it? But if people
exactly.
like the style, like Soft Machine, he was with Soft Machine, was in other band, or Tony Williams, but still one style, right? It's still just him, not adaptable.
Yeah.
And so
It's like it or lump it.
exactly, yeah. And they are the people that I gravitate towards. They've got a purity of intention. They've got a strong belief about their own thing, whatever it is, and it can be very different. It can be Charlie Parker or it can be Alan Holdsworth. Or
Yeah,
Bill
it's
McHenry,
musical honesty, isn't it?
yeah, or Bill
Yeah.
McHenry, yeah, yeah.
Bill McHenry is a stunning player. We discussed about his performance on that album, and it's unbelievable. So I will have to check out more of Bill McHenry. Definitely, he's a beautiful player. He left so much space as
Well,
well.
that's the thing about him. Loads of space, no vibrato. From what I can generally know, vibrato. Sometimes we play a long note, it's like 4 bars or something. There's some great things with him and trumpet player who died not long ago, John McNeil. Really nice band where they play this West Coast unfashionable tunes. Really fantastic. It's tenor, trumpet, bass, and drums with Jochen Rocker, drummer. You probably know these guys, and I can't remember who's on bass. They'll come to me in a minute. But it's like a jazz thing. Really fantastic. They've done two albums, and there's a little video on YouTube. So, and also just about him, I don't know much about him, but he's lived in Spain, and he's from that generation with who the other ones who are much more famous than him. He's Ethan, Iverson, whoever, Brad Meldau, and the saxophone players, I don't know who it would be, Chris Potter, I suppose. Mark Turner's slightly older, but interestingly, he's not as famous. But for me, he's much more unique than those guys. Anyway, that's a whole other subject, again. I could talk for hours, both of us, about all this, about the music for a start. But that album, that wasn't, that's another album I hadn't listened to that much, but I only sent it to you because I thought you'd be interested, because I know you like Ben, and also because we were playing duo. But I wasn't suggesting we try and play like that album, because from what I remember, I think I'm quite different from him anyway. So it's interesting what you said, that you took a few things from it to enhance our recording in the duo, just ideas.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm unable to copy anyone nowadays. I've tried that in the past. I have tried copying people. I'm sure you can imagine like the amount of years I spent obsessed with Alan Holdsworth and trying to go down that road and trying to
Yeah,
learn. But then it gets to a point where you just like you feel it's counterproductive
yeah,
to your playing on yourself, and yeah, and it's almost antithetical to the whole concept of Alan in himself. It's like so it's all about not trying to copy. And ever since I kind of reached that point in my I think I was about 24 or 25. And ever since then, I've never tried to copy. I have tried to learn from, whether it be musicians like Peter Bernstein is one. I think there's a lot of fundamentals and stuff
yeah.
that to be gained from his playing and everything. So when I say I took things, well, we'll talk about that on the last track. There was one little melodic idea, four chords. I just like those chords, and but it's just like using it as inspiration more than anything. But it was wonderful inspiration, and to be honest, it was well, it was probably the best duo Ben Monder album that I'd ever come across. So it was stunning stuff. But anyway, so we've got the next track, which I don't think there's going to be much confusion to the title with this one. So I didn't title it, guys. I love my little my little boy at the back, but
Where is
it's
he?
called Alfie.
Where is he?
He he's in the bathroom just so there's no barking.
Okay.
In you know what I mean? I don't want him to be causing a raucous during this. But yeah, I just don't want him to interrupt. But yeah, so and we know the reason for this title because the video that I made, which will be up on my channel very soon. It's already on Martin's channel, so go and check it out over there. But I wanted a music video for one of the tracks just because I thought it would be good. And I'm no film buff myself. And in South Shields, you're kind of stuck. You're limited for options. So all South Shields offers is the beach, really. But that does make up for any shortcomings.
Yeah,
It is
it
an
looks amazing.
absolutely stunning beach. And
Look him up.
so all I did, I won't go into there is a little story about this film that I made that I haven't shared with Martin or anyone yet, but I'll put it this way, there's an element of climbing involved in the shots that had to get to because you've got coves around the beach that you have to be able to climb around the coves. And I have successfully done it, but I did it 4 years ago when I first got Alfie and we did it together. But maybe I've put on a little bit of weight since that time, and so I wasn't as successful at one point of this of this journey one time this time. But regardless of that, we did. I managed to get clips from all the way around the beach. So my thought, the concept behind the video was the journey to the lighthouse. So at the start of the video, you see the lighthouse there, and so yeah, and it's just walking to the lighthouse and seeing the general nature. But obviously, if I'm out on a walk, then Alfie's well, I'm out on a walk every day, and Alfie's always with me, so he becomes the star of that video. But this track, this was Martin's favorite track on the album, and it's a beautiful track. It starts with a solo guitar introduction, with some harmony. I what was I going for? I was going for something that didn't sound that sounded tonal, but wasn't necessarily in a key center, because I knew I had a picking pattern, my texture. So I had a little picking pattern. If you listen to the video, you'll hear the picking pattern, and with that picking pattern, you can move around different harmonies and follow the journey of where the music takes you. So very similar to track two, where I had a different pattern and I could move the harmony around. It was the kind of same kind of deal, but with a picking pattern this time with my fingers. So, and then at some point I set a loop, and I was so happy because the loop was in time. Guitarists will understand that if you get the loop wrong, then it ruins things. But thankfully, and I'm not, as I'd say, I'm not a pedal buff, so I'm not particularly great at that stuff. But thankfully, on the day, it was in time. And then I built layers on top of that. And then midway through the track, me and Martin start musically having a conversation, you know. So that's one thing that I've realized over the years. You know, when you first get into jazz, you think musical conversations kind of essentially like copying what the other person plays. And then you realize that kind of gets a little bit corny. So the things I was trying to respond to Martin, but in an organic way. It's you know, it's not just, oh, Martin plays something and then I play the same thing back. Yeah, so that's what. Yeah, that's where we went. And then at the end, I'll let Martin chat about this in a second. Sorry. At the end, I had my secret weapon, which is this atomic cluster pedal, which I bought. Well, it's one of the many pedals I bought for this album. So please buy it, guys, and recoup some of my costs. You know, that would help. So this is the atomic cluster, and it's just this random pedal that I found that it just turns whatever you play in the loop. If you run it through the loop, it becomes like a glitchy random thing, and you never know what it'll sound like. And that's kind of the beauty of this. I realized I could blend it in, and it would take my loop and turn it into something else. And there's this beautiful moment at the end of the track where Martin is in a duet with the loop that I made going through this pedal. And it kind of sounds like a keyboard or a synthy kind of sound. And yeah, and for whatever reason, the loop on that day, when it went through this, it just created some magic. And it was just absolutely, I thought it was a really beautiful moment. So that is Alfie. Have you got any thoughts on that track, Martin?
Well, that's really interesting to hear the whole technical thing side of it, the guitar side, the pedal, and the fact that you've invested so much prior to the album. You know, it's amazing that you thought about it, because I hadn't thought about it that much. You know, I'm just like, well, don't have to deal with all the stuff you're dealing with. You know, just playing one note at a time. I'm like, I'm that for me was like I had this incredible cushion or cloud or whatever you want. I don't know how to describe it. This beautiful sound, because I wasn't thinking about anything from what I remember. I was just thinking, oh, there's this sound. There's this sounds going on. I'm just going to try and play in the middle of this sound. That's all it was for me the whole day. It wasn't even a day, it was an hour, wasn't it? It's like, these are my favourite albums. Just go in, do it, don't talk too much. And there's magic occurs when you have two people who are really listening and serving the music, the sound. That's all I can remember really. And but there was a few things I wanted to pick up on a few things you said at the beginning of that conversation there, at the beginning of when you were speaking about influences. And I listened to, I've heard this twice now, in different places, Larry Goldings, because you mentioned Peter Bernstein and Larry Goldings and Bill Stewart have this wonderful trio, which you know, of course. And first of all, there's a really great thing to be said for longevity. They've been together for 30 years. I love those bands that play together for ages. In Coltrane, it was about 4 or 5 years at the most with the main quartet with Jimmy and Elvin and McCoy. You know, it wasn't that long, weirdly. So to have a band for 30 years, I mean, Keith Jarrett with Jack DeJohnette and Gary Peacock's another one, you know, but they didn't play that much. I don't think they didn't do long tours or anything. Keith wouldn't do long tours, you know, but I think Larry and those guys played a lot. Anyway, the one about Larry Goldings, who I love, wanted to say that he's, in a couple of interviews, he said this very thing about influence. He said, oh, my main influences, really main influences were Oscar Peterson, Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett. He's one of the few people I listened with Keith, actually, when he was young. And so now he tries not to listen to them, ever. He doesn't, you know, particularly with the soloing thing, you know, if it comes on and someone's playing it and he'll listen to it and enjoy it, and maybe check out the comping a bit more, so, but not the soloing. So he's saying that. And then Paul Bley, I don't know whether you know this story, but Paul Bley, who's also amazing and big influence on Larry as well, I'd heard him once. He heard him once and he met him once and he said, get your favourite records at home and throw them out. I mean, Paul Bley was so contrary anyway, you know, but there's something about that, obviously. There's something in that. They're very cosy, aren't they? The records that I love, that I like a lot, are really cosy, you know. But there's something about striving. You don't have to strive for originality, but you can set up a situation where you can become more unique. And I suppose that is one of the ways, he's saying. He said, I can know what someone's going to play by their record collection, which is true. Totally true, isn't it? Nothing comes out of nowhere. People deny it. Even Keith Jarrett said he didn't transcribe. Yeah, but he listened to Paul Bley Footloose 1,000 times. He's got perfect pitch. So that's going to go in and he's going to sound like Paul Bley. And Paul Bley said, oh, Keith Jarrett eventually caught up with me when he did a free album, you know. But anyway, I'm talking about a few things that you said earlier in the conversation rather than about the actual recording that we did. But it was really great you sharing that stuff about how the pedal worked, because I don't know what's going on technically with you. A guitar player's got to deal with a lot of stuff. You know, I've played with Mike Outram for 25 years. I know he's dealing with a lot of stuff. I feel for him, you know. I feel for guitar players with it because you're relying on electronics as well. You're relying on everything working, and the button's going to work, and the amp's going to work, you know, and strings are going to be fine, you know. I just got to deal with my reed and make sure the saxophone's covering the holes, you know.
Well, that's why I didn't really play with pedals before. I usually play with two sounds. I've got my clean sound and then my lead sound, where I usually add a bit of overdrive on just to smooth it out, and that's what I use. It's like one button, and yeah, it's a lot of faff, this whole pedal malarkey, and I don't actually. Now that I've got it set up, and I think there's a time and place. I think there's a time and place for this stuff. So yeah, I did like it. But since meeting you, I have bought a board, so I don't have to get to the studio and set everything up. That was the most stressful part.
Yeah.
Plugging in all of those things and then it not working, and then me having to figure out why. So now it's all set up in advance, so that makes a big difference. But exactly. But I was too cheap to spend an extra £35 on a bit of metal before that recording. But anyway, again, we go back to the resilience of a musician there. But Anyway, so, but you're right about listening to music too much. Again, I stopped listening to Alan Holdsworth when I was about 25. I just couldn't, not because I didn't love it, because I loved it too much. And I just very rarely listen to him now
Yeah.
because I want to listen to stuff which is new to me. Because yeah, these influences can consume you and lead you away from your own journey. So
But I'm going to
yeah,
say something about that. But you can take things from them that lead you to something else. There's a very literal copying, a very literal copying, which there are a lot of players. No, I take it on saxophone. There's a lot of players who can emulate other saxophone players very well, and their career is kind of based on that. And you probably have the same with guitar, maybe with drums. I don't know, but saxophone, I would say, pretty notorious in that sense. There were David Sanborn clones, there were Michael Brecker clones when I was younger. I mean, at a really high level, unbelievable high level. And then of course there's Coltrane and Charlie Parker. But there's the other thing about it is, I've transcribed a lot. I can never remember solos really, but I've transcribed a lot of solos and transcribed loads of tunes. That's the thing that helped me more, in a way, compositionally, transcribing loads of tunes. I transcribed loads of Bill Evans' codas. I thought, wow, the way Bill ends his tunes, really fascinating and very different from everyone else at the time in 1960, when everyone would do 3-6-2-5-1 maybe, and if they're in C, they might end on D flat major 7, But Bill had all these other codas, and every single track has got a different coda. I mean, he's,
like the end of Very Early, where
for instance,
doesn't he end up on B major or something,
I think
and
he
the
does,
track's at C or something? That it's like it's very different, but very fresh.
exactly.
Bill
Yeah.
Evans.
And
But yeah,
the
he's
other thing, yeah. So I was going to say the other thing is to, which I'm sure you do, but is to listen to people on other instruments for inspiration.
oh yeah,
And then
yeah,
it's blurred. It's much more blurred. The influence, or even the copying, or anything, it's much more blurred. But I was trying to say was that take Charlie Parker for example. Okay, so I've transcribed loads of Charlie Parker, but how I've used some of it is the rhythm of some of his melodies. I've used the rhythm of the melody, written another melodic composition on top of it. Most people will have no idea I've done that, actually, because in the Western world we hear melody first before rhythm, I think, pitch before. So, for instance, my band Cherokee, which is Indian Arab influence, groove music, it's unison music, no chord changes for the most part, melodic and rhythmic, and odd times. And I've transcribed, there's a couple of Charlie Parker tunes, I've done it with a few, but Visa and Blundido. And so then I'm just giving an example really, how, and I'm sure you've got some other examples. So I've taken something from him, I'm doing literally the rhythm, I'm ignoring the notes, I'm ignoring his harmony, and it's not in a jazz context really, and I've put a new melody onto it, which has a limitation of the raga, 7 notes. So that is an example of how you can get stuff from somebody but transform it. And Steve Coleman's really good at that, because I've talked to him about that, because he's a Charlie Parker nut as well. So he's really influenced by Charlie Parker, but not in the literal way that many are, which is basically the melodic side rather than the
yeah.
rhythmic side.
Well, it's kind of in a way a different. It's like this whole thing of writing a contrafact. Like obviously that's all Parker did, with the odd occasion, like maybe you could say like uh, bird blues and stuff. I think that is far enough away from a blues to consider it a new chord progression in itself. But most of Parker's songs were all just written around different melodies on already existing changes.
That's right. Yeah.
Whereas you're taking the melodies and using those rhythms and changing the notes. So it's just a full cycle, isn't it? This has always been going on, and yeah, it's something that I've heard many players done. The amount of different variations on All the Things You Are, I've heard, with people rewriting melodies on top of
Yeah. There's many of
all the
those.
things you are. Yeah, but it can be, but yeah, as you say, sometimes you don't even realize. I think there's a guy. I don't think you would have heard of him. He's a young guitar player, really great one. Oh, I don't want to forget his name now. Max Light, and I think he did one on All the Things You Are very recently, and that was very out there. Incredible New York young player, but yeah, I love it. I listen to the final result and don't really care how it was achieved, if it sounds good in the end.
So, with Alan Holdsworth, for example, did you transcribe a lot? Did you play along? What did you do?
I tried to at first. I did try to at first, and that would have definitely informed my technique. And there are certain melodic ideas that I have certainly absorbed. Um, but as I say, it got to a point where I just had to step away from that stuff. There are other guys that have certainly gone far further down that field than me. Two wonderful players, one called Brett Stein. He wrote a very well-known book on Alan Holdsworth, and then then his student. Again, I don't like forgetting people's names. I like to give them the credit. Thomas something, a younger player. Sorry, I've forgotten. But
It'll come to you in a minute.
yeah,
They written solos out and everything like that.
well, no, they've spent far longer going down the Alan route. I'm not saying that they're copies of Alan. I don't want to insult them like that, but they they've gone further down the route of being able to emulate that sound. But there was a point where I chose not to do that. Just it was partly because of my belief of what Alan would have wanted himself. But I'm not making a moral judgment on that. And I personally thought, I think the most important thing to learn from Alan is going your own route.
Yeah.
And if I'm sitting there idolizing and trying to work towards sounding like Alan, then in the same way as idolizing Coltrane or something, it's like these guys are so unique, then you have to find your own way. So that was my thinking. I'm not saying that's a morally superior route or anything, because there's a whole debate in the Holdsworth community about that kind of thing, like people getting salty about it. I hugely respect the likes of Brett Stein. My brother bought his book. And I had a little look at it. It was incredible. The amount of work that he's put in to understanding that language. But if you play like me, if you're a legato guitarist, no matter what you play, people are going to be like, "Oh, you sound like Alan Holdsworth anyway," because it takes
Legato
up.
guitarist.
Yeah, like when you're not picking every note. So it's not, it's kind of legato like on other instruments where everything's smooth, but it's more it's referring to a technique on guitar
How does
where
he
you're
do that?
not alternate. He doesn't alternate pick every note. He tends to just pick one note per string, and then he'll use this hand to hammer on and pull off, and it creates a more fluid, smoother kind of sound.
Did he
And
get that?
that is, yeah, that's how he creates this kind of fluent flow, and that is something that that is obviously that's I do that in a slightly different way as well. So there's lots that I've picked up from Alan, but I wouldn't claim to be a huge wealth of knowledge on him in comparison to some other guys out there. But
What,
I'm a huge fan.
what, where did he get that from? Has he got that from somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been, you know, people have used it in classical guitar, this technique, but I suppose Alan just took it to another level, you know, and changed the language that by using other influences, you know, influences outside jazz, just like Coltrane did, you know, where they got into the Slonimsky books and everything, and the musical cycles, and then Coltrane comes out with giant steps through this learning. You know, not none of these guys invented this stuff. This stuff doesn't get invented, but it's developed through the knowledge that came prior to
Yeah.
it. So yeah, but that's not taking anything away from the likes of Coltrane and Allen. You know, they were incredible, and they brought it into this into jazz, which we can all be eternally grateful for.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've got the last track here. The last track, Martin went with Edding, an appropriate title. So I don't think
I've
there's
run
much
out of.
explanation required.
Yeah, no, it's just what it felt like. Because we should say, or I should say, there are two other tracks that were recorded that we're not using at the moment at this stage. I generally don't like edit. When it's an improvised thing, I kind of like to put everything out as it is. But I think you'd listen to it more deeply than I had, and you had an idea about the flow of it more than me. I had an idea of the flow in the sense of how you did it there and then. But correct me if I'm wrong. But then you listened away from the studio. Obviously, we both listened to it away from the studio. Realised there was a different flow to it. What was interesting, which we could discuss a little bit now, which I did say to you in the email when you took these two tunes out and you sent me the whole thing with all the tunes there, or with just the five that we've agreed on, and suggested I listen to the flow of the five first, which I really liked. And then I listened to the full thing, which I also like, but I could totally see where you're coming from as well, in that you're unhappy. I wasn't unhappy with how you played, but what was really interesting was those are the two tracks that I started playing first. And
Yes.
this is probably worth discussing a little bit for our development, duo, because I like the fact that you were setting everything. Basically, you were setting everything up on every track, really, because you played. We didn't come in together ever, did we? At first, we didn't hit the downbeat together at the beginning of any track, did we?
No. I mean, you
No.
kind of came in first on the first track, but I'd already set the D pedal. So there was already this like
Yeah,
vibe
yeah.
set
That's
with
what I
that.
mean. Yeah. So for our development, don't have anything preconceived. That's the thing. And the thing about this, there were some preconceived things which was worked really well. I.e., preconceived the pedals, for instance, or the D drone, or put in the capo. I never had to say that. So there were those things. But if we play together again, which we should, obviously, and we should do a concert with this. Really, we should do a gig somewhere.
Yeah, no, this is the thing. So, yeah, what Martin was saying there. So, with the five tracks that I was particularly happy with, then I had a texture that I could take that texture and manipulate it depending on where Martin went. Whereas with the two tracks that Martin sounded absolutely incredible on, but I didn't feel as I told Martin, I didn't feel I held up on those tracks. I don't think I totally
Why
did it
is
just
that?
and
Why is that?
and it's because there wasn't this that I didn't have a texture that I could manipulate, and so I didn't have that as a foundational thing. So I very much needed to either create the texture on the spot or do something else. And this is this is where I said to Martin a while ago. This was just after we recorded the album, and we were, oh no, maybe it was actually after the recording session in person when we were talking. It's something that I feel I could do a better job on. I think being on the spot in the moment, I feel I got a little bit overwhelmed in those moments. And it's why I said I think I sent you a message and saying I would love to play more in that way with you, in order to learn that from you. So although I feel like I could have done better on those tracks, I genuinely think it's a lack of experience from my part,
Okay.
and it's something that I feel I need to develop. Um, so although those two tracks were okay, I I feel they were they were different. They were noticeably different in nature to the other tracks. Um,
True. That is
So,
true.
but maybe I was a little bit too in my own head, and as I told you on this in the studio, I didn't want to listen to the album after we recorded. I wanted to wait, sleep on it, get back to the northeast, and then listen to it. I think I listened to it on the train home actually, and I was really happy with it. But I can sometimes be a little bit too judgmental on my own things. But I do think that there was an element of my judgment which was right in the fact that I do feel there I do feel like in those two tracks there was an element of inexperience which I think I could hear, on my part, obviously. So yeah, so that's why I said that. But I also did say that I was happy. I left it up to Martin, but Martin went along with it in the end of the day, which I suppose I'll be thankful for. So yeah, so that's the score with those two tracks.
I think we made the right decision though for an album for how, as you know, how it flows. I think that was very perceptive of you to suggest that because you could have not said anything and just let me take over. Oh, I'll just put everything out. It's fine. It's all fine, and then on to the next thing, or whatever. So I really, the combination of us two, how we approach things is different. And so I really, it's great. You're a great sounding board to have that. I'm a bit more impulsive in a way, I think, or I like recording a lot, and because I'm hardly doing any gigs, so I like recording. Oh, then I'll record something else next week, and whereas you're a bit more thoughtful about it than me. I think in the bigger picture of it. There's still something I remember Paul Blay saying when he did a duo album with Paul Motion called Notes, with piano and drums. And he said it's great playing with Paul Motion because you could just change direction anyway because he's not playing your direction anyway. At the time he used a slightly different word. He's not saying he wasn't listening, but it, because that relates back to something you were saying earlier about playing duo, improvised, and you copying. Copying is the worst thing. That's like beginners. I'm listening because I'm emulated what somebody's just played. No. Because you wouldn't do that in a conversation. You get some people who do that, repeat what you're saying in comms. That's like, no one wants that. That's horrendous, repeating back to you as you talk. So don't need to be worried about changing gear or even being in a different tonality or a different rhythmic thing or different sphere. Or you can get into your own thing and ignore me if you want.
Yeah, it's definitely something that yeah, for the next one, I think that's the way to go, Martin. So yeah, I mean, it's not as if what we did wasn't improvised, because it was, but
Yeah.
it was structured, and this is why. This is my problem with free music in general, Martin. And this is just something that. So when I think of what free music do I like, I straight away think of "Out to Lunch" by Ornette Coleman, or
Eric
or
Dolphy.
sorry, yeah, Eric Dolphy. Sorry, and then
Eric,
the Ornette Coleman stuff, and all of this stuff um, is very structured, and it is a lot of it. Yeah, I mean, you've got the forms, you've got the tunes, you
well,
know.
that's not free, is it? That's not totally.
Exactly, exactly.
And you prefer that? I mean, I love Ornette. I haven't heard Out to Lunch for years. I've got it on vinyl, but I don't gravitate towards Eric as much, to be honest. Maybe it's the big intervallic thing, whereas the Ornette is simpler, almost like a folk nursery rhyme melody. Is very, very diatonic. Eric's wider intervals, and I don't know. I just don't gravitate to that. Maybe that's why I don't gravitate towards Holdsworth so much. Who knows?
Maybe.
I think they're both amazing, but
Yeah, well, I've always loved Eric Dolphy, but then you'll get some stuff like I don't want. I mean, I don't think anyone would take any offense, but stuff like spiritual unity. I'll use an example. Albert Ayler. It's very, very free, and I struggle to, and this is my own weakness. It's obviously not Albert Ayler's weakness, but it's like I can listen to it from like an educational standpoint, but I don't know whether I actually enjoy it. And this is what I find with not all three albums. I thought the one that you did, sorry, his name, I've forgotten his name, but that pianist that you did that
I've
free
done a
album.
couple.
Yeah,
One with Alex Maguire
oh, it was the one that there's you on
or
your
Will Butterworth. Will Butterworth. Or
Will Butterworth. That's the one. Yeah, I listened to some of that stuff, and I thought they were beautiful textures and everything. But some free albums, I just I just question whether I would actually want to listen to it. And it's always this purely free, unstructured kind of approach. And to be honest, when I listened to Bloom by Ben Monder, I would say that that was very structured. I think it was mixed. I think there were some less structured tracks, like the ones where they're doing the single note lines, but there's a lot of Ben Monder soundscapes in there. Uh, and I think that's why I enjoy listening to it more. But it's not impossible to give that sense of structure like you did with Will in many of those tracks. So yeah, so I definitely think that's what I learned from this album. That from doing that, those I think I learn more from things where I don't feel I've lived up to the standards I set than from areas where I feel happy with it. So yeah, so that's some musical development on my part that is good to it was a good learning process in that sense.
there, there, there are different kinds of what you call free or improvised music. It's a huge, wide range. You could say there's people coming out of Ornette, which is sort of what I like. It's a more melodic, traditionally kind of melodic kind of thing. It's not. I don't really play atonal. And then there's other aspects of the music where people are not coming from jazz at all. For instance, they're coming from contemporary classical music or rock music or noise music, whatever you want to call it, who play improvised music. And there are also those people who the extended techniques on the instrument are very important to them. for multiphonics on the saxophone would be one example where you can play chords. So
Yeah.
some people have really developed that to a high level. I have no idea, but I've got a couple of them, a couple of fingerings where I can play chords really that I might have done on the album. I can't remember, but and that's not to do with tonality or anything. It's just to do with extended techniques. Or some people use that within the whole range of what else they do as well. So there improvised music, free music is hugely, it's wide. For instance, Mark Sanders, I did a duo with, he's a Russian drummer. He said to me the first time he played with Evan Parker, he started playing in time and groove, and Evan turned around and said, I don't want you to do any of that. So with Evan, with Mark, it seemed he doesn't want any of that groove. You understand me? A groove or any relation to time. Whereas with me, I love that. I'm always just want to play melodies. That's what I'm trying to do all the time. Just kind of play a melodic flow through things.
Well, that's another thing, actually. I also felt in those situations that if I'd had a bass underneath me or a bass and drums, which is the situation where I feel most comfortable having playing with a rhythm section under me,
Yeah.
then I would have far more freedom I know I shouldn't have more freedom, but I would have this sense of more freedom.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have to do what I subconsciously want to do. I know it's not essential, but which is kind of fill out the sound, and essentially act as a full band to support the soloist, which in this case was you. And so yeah, I think being in the duo setup really brought to light that thing. If there was a bass and drums there, then I don't believe I would have felt the same way.
No, me too as well. Even though I'm not what you call a rhythm section player, I feel totally different. I might play less if I'm playing with a bass drum. I don't know, yeah, but it's just different. You got two other people's energy with you, yes, and also stylistic. It depends what you mean we were playing. If we played free with four people, it's very different. Or if we played a tune with four people, it's going to be different again, isn't it? We're actually playing in time.
Yeah, so that was a big thing, and it's why when you initially said let's do an album, I was, as I'd said to you before, then I initially said let's get a bass player in, and then I realized this was me trying to console myself, and I needed to put myself on the spot. And I talk about that a lot on the channel, putting yourself into situations which are sometimes uncomfortable situations in order to learn from them. Obviously this was not an uncomfortable situation at all, but it was a situation where I felt where I was outside the solo on a set of changes with a rhythm section, which if anywhere I feel comfortable, that's where I suppose where it would be.
Okay.
And
So
people seem to say, oh well, you've got lots and lots of confidence, so you don't have to deal with these things. It's not really about confidence, it's about having the willingness to fail. It's very nice when you don't fail and things come together like it did, like I feel it did with you, Martin. And that's a wonderful situation. But if you don't put yourself in the situation, you don't learn from it at all. So yeah, so it's not about confidence or ego or anything. It's about lack of ego. People often talk about ego, and they only talk about ego from the perspective that it's through some kind of thinking that you're great or thinking that you're the best. But I think a lot of the time, ego is more apparent when you shy away from things, and it's trying to console yourself and run away from these things and not be willing to put yourself in a position to fail. I think that's also I think a lack of confidence is just as much from ego than
Yeah,
overconfidence.
very
You know what
true.
I mean?
Very true.
So yeah, it's about getting rid of ego. It's not about just not. It's not about humbleness or anything. It's about truly getting rid of ego and putting yourself in the situation and seeing what happens, regardless. So yeah, sorry, we're getting into Eckhart Tolle there,
Well,
but
it's interesting because we need ego as well. You don't want to get rid of it completely. You can't function in the day. You need to get up and have some kind of ego strength. I'm going to do this, whatever. You can describe it as ego. But yeah, in the music, it's good to get lost in the music. That's what. Um, so you're just in bathing sound, sounds. I suppose you could say that as yeah, trying to get rid of ego. I mean, I haven't thought about it too much like that, but
well, didn't Miles say when you play music, you leave your ego at the door? Was it Miles, that quote?
did it say that? I don't know.
It was some quote, and I think that I kind of I like that quote because, as you say, yes, you do need ego. Like, I mean, you need an element of drive. You need an
Yeah,
element of resilience to even be a musician in the first place. You know,
yeah,
at least one that attempts to make a living from it. So yeah, if you don't, yeah, ego helps drive you to become better. But if you're playing music with people, then that same ego that helps you in some situations can also get in the way. So I actually
yeah.
think players who are too negative about their own playing, including myself, I put that down to, I put that a lot down to ego, about feeling that you should be better than you actually are. You've got an idea of yourself in your head that's actually overinflated. So you kind of shy away from situations to not show your actual level, and that's born from a self-inflated idea of your own ability, which is again ego. So anyway, sorry, getting a little bit off track. Final thing on the ending track.
Fine.
The last track, I did do a little cut there in the ending track. It was the only other cut that I did on the album. And it was right at the end, because at the end of the track, I didn't know that Martin wasn't going to come in again. So I didn't know that it was going to be the ending when it was the ending. So, and I played some chords after when we got to the last section, to the outro of the tune. I played some chords, and I'll be honest, I actually liked the chords. They were nice chords. There was some, it was nice, but I just felt it went on a little bit. So I chopped 30 seconds or so of chords right at the end of the section until I went back to those Ben Monder four chords, which was the basis for the track. Doesn't sound anything like a Ben Monder tune. You can it was anyway. It was on that Bloom album. You can go and listen to it. You won't be able to hear the chords or anything, but they were those four chords in my mind, and that kind of became a theme for the song.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I thought I went on a little bit in this section, as I say, because I was unsure whether we were going somewhere else with it or not.
Didn't feel right for me to come back in. It's from what I remember. You were getting into something so great. I just wanted to leave you to. So what are you saying, that they were the same chords that you were repeating, but you cut 30 seconds off, or were they different chords?
Well, I played the four chords, but then I went somewhere different with it.
Yeah.
I went
That's what you.
somewhere, yeah, it was different each time. But there was this extra section of chords which was a different thing, something different altogether. And I got rid of that little section, even though, as I say, I like the chords. But I thought, since it became the ending, I thought I'd gone on a little bit long. So I condensed that last little bit. And that was the only other little cheeky cut I made to the files. So that was another little bit of studio cheek that I added in at the end. But
Yeah, I know nothing about this, viewers. He's telling me now.
no, he's raw. Yeah, he's raw. Like these are my guilty secrets here. But yeah,
I think you've got vision. I think you've got vision in it. I listen to it with your suggestions. It sounds great. I think you're right. It's good. Really
well,
concise. It's a great album. Great album. Really pleased we did it.
yeah. So am I, Martin. And obviously, I'll eternally thank you for the opportunity. And obviously, we'll need to sort out some stuff for the future. We've kind of briefly discussed that on email, but I'll need to get my thinking cap on for sorting some things out. But yeah, it was such a pleasure to do this album, and it's such a rewarding process, and it's so nice to have something that I can honestly say I'm proud of what we did,
Oh,
Martin.
good.
I think it. I think it. I think it's. I think the album is holistic, and I think there's value in the album. I think listening
Yeah.
to it from start to finish, I think it's rewarding for the right listener. So so yeah, it was an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
But
likewise. It's a spontaneous pleasure. So it's fantastic. And without hearing you play, but I heard you talk, we talked. I knew you were a bright guy. You listened to lots of music. You sounded deep into the music. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be great. And it was fine. It was effortless. We should also mention that it's at Porcupine Studios in Mottingham, which is southeast London. And Nick Taylor, he's been recording there for 40 years. It might finish soon, by the way, but that's another story. But so I've recorded a lot with Nick over the last couple of years, after not being there for 30 years or something. The last couple of years I've recorded a lot. So I know him well and I really appreciate it there. And I like the sound in the room. So that's the other thing we should mention. Yeah, it's Porcupine Studio.
that was a wonderful studio, and Nick was such a helpful guy. He let me he let me in early to set my pedals up. I did sort him out a little bit of extra dosh for the inconvenience, but he was wonderful. He was able to set it up straight away. He could hear every detail. Wonderful studio, beautiful Steinway piano in there, and yeah, wonderful experience all around. And obviously, I mentioned him earlier, but big thanks to my brother Joe, but Joseph Harrison for being able to do the mixing properly, which is something which is just a little bit. I can mix something for a YouTube video, but when it becomes to something serious, then it becomes a little bit beyond my ability. So Joe really put in some time there, and he made it sound really great in the end of the day. Because I'd ruined your sax sound, Martin, with the phasing. I'd ruined
You'd
it.
be in trouble then. You'd be in trouble then.
Yeah, but he was able to sort it out. I could tell there was something wrong with it, but I didn't know what I'd done wrong. And he was like, "Oh, you flipped the panning," and I was like, "Oh, of course." But I'm just a technophobe outside my areas that I know about. But anyway, Martin, obviously, I'm sure we'll do another chat on the channel soon, very soon. But I just want to thank you for joining me here today.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm sure we've got so much to talk about, we Lance, because we divert into, well, it's all one thing to me, everything, but, Eckhart Tolle or something, or we'll talk about ego, or, we'll get into other things, or cancel culture again. And, there's a lot to talk about. And I want to be allies, and I feel, I'm sure we don't agree on everything in the world, but I feel you're an ally, and certainly a musical ally. So it's really important to me now at this stage.